Hey copycat quilters, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a fun scrap busting block that I want to share with you. It can be used to make anything from placemats all the way up to big quilts, and it will use up your scraps or stash in no time. But first I wanted to let you know I've opened a little shop online. It's called the Ginger Tea Quilt Company, and I'm going to post things like pattern guides there and maybe even some patterns that I've put together. I'm also developing a course to help experienced quilters who are ready to dip their toe into a little bit of improv. These blocks will be great for busting up your stash, for using coordinated fabrics, or even for an excuse to go shop a little for some new fabric. If you sign up for my newsletter at Ginger Tea Quilt Company, you'll get a PDF of the math magical formula that I'm going to show you today for the blocks, and it'll also let you be first in line to hear about the new course once it goes live.
So let me show you this magical block. This math is super simple, and I know sometimes people struggle, so here it is. For your stash, cut 3.5 inch squares, cut 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles, and cut 6.5 inch squares. That's it. So I cut those shapes and just have stacks of them in my sewing room, and then I can just grab those pieces and put them together. It doesn't even matter how many rectangles you have versus squares, because you're just going to put together what you have into different layouts. And then when you make those blocks, they're 6.5 by 12 inch blocks. When you make those blocks, all you have to do is rearrange and play. You can put the two rectangles on top of a square. You can put a rectangle on top of the square and then two squares below it, or just use two big squares. All of these will end up measuring 6.5 by 12.5 inches. I've shown a couple of more. I do like to try to put the square in different positions, the big square. So the one on the left, the big square is on the bottom and it has a rectangle and two squares on top, or the one in the middle, the square's in the middle. If you do it that way, whenever you lay your blocks out, those big blocks move around, and so you don't just get straight rows of those 6.5 inch squares. You can also make blocks with no big square in them. You can use all the 3.5 inch squares. You can use all rectangles. You can mix rectangles and squares. It's really simple to just put them together however, and it makes it super fast. You can just chain piece one after another, and then whenever you get the first two things sewn together, look at it and see, what am I going to add on next? So here's some of the basic layouts that I put together. Again, you can make whatever you want. I am going to provide this as a free download if you sign up for my newsletter at gingerteaquiltcompany.com. I'll put a link in the description below. And I did do a couple of quilt layouts, just showing you if you use kind of those analogous colors where they're on the color wheel close to each other with the purples and blues, or the one on the right is more just scrappy. But you can see on these, you get great movement because your 6.5 inch blocks are not in a straight row. I did show some pictures with extra binding or with borders. And this is just showing a couple in the fall colors if you wanted like a fall table runner. Because these blocks are all 6.5 by 12 inches, they're really easy to just lay side by side. You can put some horizontal and some vertical, and it's easy math to figure out how big you want. I'm making 12 by 18 inch placemats, so I need the 12 inch, which is the size of this block, vertical, and then I need 3 of them to go across for the 18 inches because each is 6 inches. It does make the math really easy, or you can just make a lot of blocks, lay them out on the floor, and decide how big you want your quilt then.
These are the placemats that I've made using that math magical formula. I have 3 columns, and each column is 12 inches tall and 6 inches wide. Now you can see I used a solid big square and then the rectangle in 2 squares. Here I did the rectangle sideways instead of vertical, and I just made these up from scraps that I had cut. So you can see they look different just based on the fabrics that they have, but also you can see on this one the solid block or the 6 inch block is kind of staggered so you don't get one straight row across. And you know, after I had these cut, I just threw them into piles, and it maybe took me an hour to sew these up completely, and there's 9 placemats here. And I do still have to quilt and bind them. But I really like the variety of how you don't see the row straight across. It gives your eyes some movement because you're following the bigger squares usually. And this one is about as wild and bright as you can get. But I think these will make really cheerful placemats. And I do plan to maybe do some ruler work in the solid squares, just to kind of practice some ruler work and to add some interest. Either that or a very dense overall quilting pattern that will kind of tie the colors together, because they are kind of random and all over the place. So when my grandkids come over, I love to give them something special or exciting. And I thought this time I would make them some little placemats to have at the table for when we eat the pizza, and something that they can actually spill on and it'll be okay. So I did use the 6.5-inch blocks and then the 3x6 rectangles or 2 3-inch squares. Now I didn't make these into the columns the way I did those others, but it's still that same principle of a larger square, 2 smaller, or a corresponding rectangle. And this one has Paw Patrol, Bluey, Cocomelon, and of course some dinosaurs and lots of Spider-Man. And since I had some of those fabrics left over, I decided to piece together the backing. Now one thing you can see on the back is I was able to just follow a 3-inch line and across the center of this. So the quilting was very easy. I took a ruler and drew a line here, and it comes up through that 3-inch mark, and then I can just put it straight through the 6-inch block. So the quilting lines were simple to just do in those lines, and then one straight line across. It was very quick and easy to do. Probably the most challenging thing was the binding. So I made both of these for the boys. And again, this one you can see the blocks are staggered and off center from each other, and I used those 3-inch marks to do my quilting design. So I also have 2 little grand friends that live next door that are both girls about that same age, and so of course I had to make them some too. So I used the Disney princesses. I have Elsa, I have Moana, but one of them actually loves Spider-Man. I asked her mom, and she instantly sent me a picture of the little girl in her Spider-Man pajamas. So hers has a little touch of Spider-Man on it too. And again, I pieced the back. I used strips of the leftover because I'm not going to make too many more things with the Disney princesses on them. And you may be able to see the quilting lines. Again, I just did the 3-inch lines between the blocks and extended it across the larger squares. And one more for the little girl, and she's not into Spider-Man, so she didn't get the Spider-Man treatment on hers. These were so much fun to make, and they're very cute, simple. My quilt guild actually collects placemats for Meals on Wheels, and these are all sized 12 by 18 inches. It's the 6 and the 6, so that makes the 12, and then a 6, 6, and a 6 across makes the 18. So really simple, fun little gift. Again, the biggest challenge on it was the binding. So let me know what you think. Do you think you could use those blocks in a quilt or a small project? I really like how whenever you put those pieces together, you can arrange them in the quilt so that there's no straight line across of your bigger squares. And you get this look that's kind of all over the place, and it keeps your eye moving around. You're not reading left to right in solid rows. Your eyes are kind of bouncing between the different colors or the different larger squares. Would you make a quilt out of that, and would you use just scraps, random scraps, and go the chaotic route, or maybe a little controlled chaos where you use your scraps and you use colors in the same family or the same hues to kind of get a more coordinated look, but you're still using scraps? Or would you use some of the fabric you have in your stash and make more of a coordinated look across the quilt? You know, I kind of go either way. I like the total random scrappiness, and then I also like more of kind of the controlled chaos where you're using that color coordinated fabric. But I also tend to end up having a lot of the same color fabrics in my stash anyway, because those are the colors that I like the most. So let me know below if you're going to make a project with this, and you can always come to my Facebook group, Copycat Quilter, and show off your pictures there of things that you make. And don't forget to go to gingerteaquiltco.com, and when you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get a PDF that shows what I showed you today, gives you the measurements, and shows you a lot of different arrangements of how you can build those 6 by 12 inch modules and then put them together in a quilt. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you come back and see more videos. I'm probably going to use that mathemagical formula again. In fact, I know I am. So thanks for watching, and bye for now.